Hello Roshan, ಇವಾಗ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್
हेलो
ಮಾಡಿ.
मैम, नमस्ते मैम।
ಹಲೋ, ನಮಸ್ತೆ ರೋಷನ್. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಕೊಡ್ತೀನಿ ಸರ್. Just wait for a minute, I'll start with the class. Today no, there is problem with the writing pen, so just kindly adjust without pen for the present class.
ओके मैम।
Okay. So shall I start with the presentation or should I wait?
स्टार्ट मैम।
Start, fine. Just a second. So today I'll start with the one more communicable disease, that is the diphtheria. Smriti, Varsha, and others. Are you all there? Sirisha?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you all see the slides?
यस मैम।
Fine. So diphtheria is also one of the communicable respiratory disease. So in this diphtheria, the very important things I'll focus over here. So in this diphtheria, the word diphtheria is derived from the Greek word, which basically means a leather. And then what are the various synonyms for this? Syrian ulcer, because in Syria, like these ulcers are caused by diphtheria, are very much common. So they are also called as Syrian ulcers. It's also called as what? Membranous angina. So what is the meaning of the word angina? Students?
पेन।
Angina means pain. Or very commonly we can say that it is someone to strangulate. So somebody who squeezes the neck and strangulation happens, no? That time also we call it as what? Angina. Just a second, some more students are coming. And it is also called as malignant croak. So again, it means that something for laryngeal and pharyngeal type of ulcers, which is like a very severe of its form. Just a second. Okay. So the word diphtheria it basically means what? Leather. So whatever the lesions are there, especially the pharyngeal or laryngeal lesions, it contains some leathery type of material when we touch it. And then it is known by different synonyms. What are the synonyms, students? It is also called as Syrian
सीरियन
ulcer, membranous
एंजिन।
angina. Membranous angina means some layer is there and it is causing some suffocation or strangulation or pain. Then it is also called as malignant, that is most virulent nature of the laryngeal or pharyngeal pathology. Then it is also called as Bowlogeny sore throat. So it is a name of the place in the European country. So in this particular area or region, these diphtheриal lesions were very much common when it was observed. And it is an acute toxin mediated disease which is caused by Corneobacterium diphtheriae. And what is the incubation period? In your NEET MCQs, most commonly asked, it is less than a week, that is 2 to 5 days. And who is the person who has first coined the term diphtheria? So it is Pierre Bretonneau. So he was from the France. So he was a physician. So in 1821, he described the clinical features of this particular diphtheria and he named it as what? Diphtheria. And let us see some of the bacteriological features. It is caused by Corneobacterium diphtheriae. And here in this cornea, the word cornea, it means what? Club shaped. And diphtheria means what? Leather. So this particular diphtheria is caused by club shaped organelle, which are gram positive and aerobic bacilli. Aerobic means what? They require oxygen for their growth. So they are called as aerobic bacilli and they were first stained by Klebs and later it was cultured by Loeffler. So it is also called as what? Kleb-Loeffler's bacilli. So sometimes in your microbiology also, MCQ can be asked related to cornea bacteria. And very important is that they are non-capsulated and they contain some polymetaphosphate granules and they are also called as what? Metachromatic granules. And look at this picture. Can you all see this arrow mark and the picture which I'm trying to highlight here?
यस मैम।
Okay, so in this picture, if you see this Corneobacteria, which are rod shaped or club shaped, they are always arranged in somewhat pairs. So this one and this one joined together, and this pairing pattern of this diphtheria, it gives a typical Chinese letter appearance. It gives a typical Chinese letter appearance, hence it is
Yeah.
also called as cuneiform arrangement. And this particular bacteria, for if it has to grow, it has to grow in enrichment media. And the best enrichment media for the growth of Corynebacterium is which one? Telluride blood agar. Look at this blood agar plate. So under this particular medium, this Corynebacteria will be well grown.
Ma'am,
And yeah, tell me,
ma'am, slides are not visible, ma'am.
slides are not visible.
Not displaying, ma'am.
They're not displaying. Just a second.
Displaying, ma'am.
Displaying.
Yes, ma'am.
Not present.
Sirisha, can you
Ma'am,
see it now?
no, ma'am.
Others?
Ma'am, you have two ID. Tell her to tell her to click another ID.
Which one, Roshan?
You have two ID, na, ma'am. Actually, one is for presentation, one is for your teaching, talking. So please tell her to click the another.
I'm not getting it exactly.
Ma'am, you in your name there are two ID
Huh.
in our display. One for presentation and one for talking, ma'am. Means taking the class.
Yeah, yeah.
So please tell her to click the presentation one.
Sirisha, someone who is having the problem in viewing the slide, no? Can you just click the other one? The class one.
Okay, ma'am.
Now, can you see the slide?
No, ma'am. Maybe it's slow in due to work, ma'am. Okay,
This
ma'am.
is Sirisha, right?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Okay,
I'm
okay,
okay, ma'am. Continue, ma'am. No problem, ma'am.
okay. So, shall I continue with this? Others, can you all see the slides, right? Vishal and others. Students,
Yes, ma'am.
Akash, you all can see the slides?
Yeah, ma'am. We can see the slides.
Okay. So, very important about the Corynebacterium diphtheria is that it is a gram positive and it contains a polymetaphosphate granules and it is stained by which one? Albert stain. So, if you look at this picture, it looks color. So, this view is seen under Albert stain. And what is the media that is required for its growth? It is tellurite blood agar. Now, what is the how this diphtheria, Corynebacteria diphtheria, it becomes toxigenic. So now, are you all able to hear me, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, very important point to be noted is that all the Corynebacterium are not toxigenic. That means even though if they infect us, but there is no guarantee that we will show the manifestation of the Corynebacteria diphtheria disease. So now what is the thing is that this particular Corynebacteria, first it has to be infected with the beta bacteriophage, that is a virus. So now what happens, this bacteriophage virus, when it comes and infects this Corynebacteria, then what happens, it has got some genes, toxic genes. So once the toxic genes from the bacteriophage, when it enters the Corynebacteria, then what happens, that Corynebacteria will become toxigenic. So as such, the Corynebacteria is not a toxigenic strain, but it becomes toxigenic to the humans when it gets infected with which one, students? By the beta bacteriophage. This you have to remember. Yes, can you all see the picture here?
Yes, ma'am.
Bacteriophage infecting the Corynebacteria, and this bacteriophage releases its toxic gene and it will interact with the Corynebacteria and it will direct it and it will produce a toxin. And once this Corynebacteria becomes toxigenic, that means it is capable of producing the exotoxin that is called as diphtheria toxin, that is DT. Now, if you want to look at the structure of this DT or diphtheria toxin, it has got two subunits, that is A and B subunits. And these two subunits are joined by what? Disulfide bond. These two subunits are joined by disulfide bonds. Now what happens? once this corneobacteria enters the host by means of droplet infection, then what happens? There will be endocytosis. The host cell, when it enters the host cells, it enters the host cell by means of endocytosis. Now, a vesicle will be formed that contains this diphtheria toxin containing both A and B subunits. Very important point to be noted is B subunit is bigger in size compared to that of the A subunit. And this B subunit, it attaches to the host cell and it will enter the host cell. And now what happens? Because of the acidification, this A and B subunits, they get detached, and then A subunit, it will enter the cytoplasm of the host, and then it reaches the ribosomes, and ultimately it will prevent the protein synthesis by inactivating the elongation factor 2. Once the protein synthesis of the cell is stopped, then it will lead to what? Cell death. So this ultimately results in the necrosis of the cell. So this is how the diphtheриal toxin, it shows its pathogenicity over the host cells. Yes, are you all clear with this,
Yes, ma'am.
students? Yeah. So the diphtheria toxin, when the corneobacteria will become toxigenic because of the infection with the beta bacteriophage, then this toxin has got A and B subunits, and B subunit, it attaches to the host cell, and then once it enters the host cell, now the A subunit enters the cytoplasm, and it will target the what are ribosomes. Finally, the protein synthesis is totally stopped, and this results in cell death and necrosis, leading to the piling up of the material, causing the production of the pseudomembrane. And once it, all the necrotic material, as it gets accumulated, it leads to the formation of what? Thick leathery type of membrane, which is tightly adherent to the pharyngeal or pharyngeal wall. And very important point to be noted is that this particular toxin, or the the bacteria, it is not invasive in nature. It is not invasive in nature. Now, very important point to be noted is that subtypes of Corynebacteria diphtheriae. What are the various subtypes according to MacLeod and Anderson's classification? Yes. So now, according to this MacLeod and Anderson's classification, there are totally 4 types are there, but clinically, which are very important to us, is 3 types. That is Corynebacteria, Diphtheria mitis, gravis, and intermediates. And the fourth one is Belfanti. So there are 4 subtypes of Corynebacteria, diphtheria, and how the subtypes are categorized based on the nature of the colony production. So if you look at the nature of the colonies, so based on the colony structure or the nature, these are categorized into 4 types. But very important is that all the 4 types, they produce the identical toxin, and that is diphtheria toxin. And this toxin has got what equal amount of stimulating the immune system. And here, potential MCQ question that can be asked is mites, Corynebacteria mites. It causes what? Endemic diphtheria. So if at all there is a endemic diphtheria, so it is caused by which one, students? It is caused by mites.
Mighty.
So that is a subtype of Corynebacteria. And if at all a sudden outbreak of diphtheria, then that is a epidemic. So usually we need to suspect that it is caused by gravis. And if it is something like very fatal, very severe type, where it is something like hemorrhagic, then you can say that it is caused by which one? It is caused by intermediates. So these are the points which you need to uh, just a second. One student is trying to join here. So if at all it is a hemorrhagic type of diphtheria, it is caused by which species? Intermediates. And if it is epidemic, it is caused by gravis, and mitis means it causes what? Endemic. So these points you need to remember it. And why I'm stressing it over here is that recently, I think you all must be aware, last year, the Gulbarga Medical College students, most sudden outbreak of diphtheria has taken place. And it has come in the newspaper also, like it was one of the news. So it is like some second year MBBS students, they were affected with the outbreak of the diphtheria. So they were not immunized, and some of the students, like they didn't receive the booster dose. And such students, they were infected with which one, students? It was infected, they were all infected with the gravis type of Corynebacteria. So this can be one of the potential MCQ question. So epidemics are always caused by gravis. And when we look at the colonies, so like mites, how the colonies they look like? Look at the picture here. They are blackish and some dewdrop type of the colonies. and with a gray periphery. So they are tiny blackish type of colored colonies. And whereas gravis, here the colony size is larger in size and they are grayish in color compared to that of the mites, which is black in color. And intermediates means the colony, if you see, they are very much small in size and they are dull in color and they look somewhat gray to blackish in color. Just a second, students. Someone is trying to join it. Can you all able to hear me? Students?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And you all can see the slides, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now, what is the route of transmission or mode of transmission of diphtheria? It is basically respiratory spread, and very important is that nasal secretions are more dangerous. And sometimes a direct transmission can happen through the skin abrasion. This can result in which one, students? Can one of you switch off your microphone? There is some disturbance. So, if there is a direct contact with the skin, it leads to cutaneous diphtheria, and it can also be transmitted through the fomites. And what is the period of infectivity? Like if the person is a known case of diphtheria, then from when to when he will be communicable to the others? It is from 14 days to 28 days from the onset of the disease. And the infectivity period is longer for the carriers. And very important is that carriers are the more important source of infection. So look at here. If there is a case who is showing a clinical symptoms, and if there is a carrier who is not showing clinical symptoms, that is asymptomatic, who is more risky to the healthy people, students?
Carrier.
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 So carriers are very risky in case of diphtheria and in case of which one more disease, that is
Meningitis.
meningococcal meningitis. So these are the two respiratory infections in which the carriers are very, very important source of the spread of infection. And the incidence rate of diphtheria in carriers is 0.5 to 1%. And very important is that immunization does not prevent the carrier state. And when you can say that the carrier is non-communicable, because related to this particular word, an MCQ has been already asked. So when you say that this particular carrier is not communicable, so it can be said that when there are at least two cultures from the nose or throat within 24 hours, if they are negative. So for example, if you take two cultures and go 24 hours, the time gap between the two cultures, and if both the cultures are found to be negative from an carrier, then you can clearly declare that that person is not at all communicable to the society. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, if you see the respiratory type of diphtheria, so based on the anatomical location, whether it is affecting the pharynx or larynx or tracheobronchial area, so whatever it is, based on that, you can clinically categorize into pharyngeal diphtheria or nasal diphtheria, or you can say that it is just a second. There is some disturbance. Can the person switch off your microphone? Thank you. Now, what happens? So, based on the anatomical location of this diphtheria, Corynebacteria diphtheria, where it affects, it can be pharyngeal diphtheria, laryngeal diphtheria, or nasal diphtheria, which is like very mild, the nasal diphtheria. It is clinically presented with a simple sneeze and running nose or stuffy nose. And pharyngeal diphtheria, it is very common, and it is clinically characterized by the presence of pseudomembrane. Can you all see the pseudomembrane over here? If at
Yes,
all you
ma'am.
will be given some picture-based question, so this is some grayish white, thick, leathery type of membrane. So that is present on the walls of the pharynx. And very important is that in the early stage of the disease, this pseudomembrane, it is superficial to the pharynx. And as the pathogenicity increases, the membrane becomes very thick and it becomes invasive. Like it involves all the layers of the pharynx, and then totally it may what obstruct the pharyngeal cavity itself. So that time it becomes very much life threatening to the patient. And the necrotic pharyngeal, this pseudomembrane, it basically contains what? The necrotic tissue. I think you must be knowing now the mechanism of this, how it forms and all. And this pseudomembrane, it contains bacterial, lymphocytes, plasma cells, fibrin, and dead cells. And it is tightly adherent to the pharyngeal wall. And if you try to scrape it, then it will bleed profusely, or you can see pinpoint bleeding spots. And it is very painful condition. And clinically the patient also presents with mild fever, and the patient appears toxic, like very much unhealthy looking features will be there. And one more very important clinical manifestation is that if this is very much extensive, then there will be surrounding cervical lymphadenopathy. Can you all appreciate this girl's picture over here? Can you see a neck which is very much swollen here?
Yes, ma'am.
So this we call it as what? Swollen neck or bull neck. Why it happens? It happens because of the enlarged cervical lymph nodes, and it is also because of the accumulation of the fluid, that is edema. So all this inflammatory fluid with the lymph nodes enlargement, it results in the clinical picture, that is bull neck. And this is an emergency situation. This ultimately results in difficulty in swallowing and difficulty in breathing. Along with this, there will be respiratory wheeze, and sometimes the pseudomembrane, it can get detached and it can go and get obstructed in the respiratory pathway. That is, this membrane can go and get detached and block somewhere in the trachea, or it can go and block in the bronchi or in the terminal parts of the respiratory tubules. So ultimately resulting in what? It results in respiratory distress and respiratory arrest, and then finally the patient will die because of these complications. And sometimes what happens, some other characteristic features of the diphtheria is that the toxins of this diphtheria, that is diphtherial toxin, it can get into the bloodstream and it will affect the myocardial tissue because it has got affinity over there. So it will reach the myocardium or the heart, and then it causes what? Myocarditis, that is inflammation of the heart muscle. So then what will happen clinically, what we can see, you can see the arrhythmias, and finally the heart will find it very difficult to pump the adequate amount of blood to the vital organs. So that we call it as what? Heart failure. That is inability of the heart to pump the adequate amount of the blood. So there will be hypoxia, and the vital organs will be suffering because of that. Sometimes what happens, this diphtherial toxin, it has also got affinity towards which one, students? Affinity towards the neural tissue. Then what happens? It will result in polyneuropathy. So multiple peripheral nervous system, it will be affected, and it will cause which one? Polyneuropathy. So then again what will happen? It will result in the nerve demyelination. And very important is that it has got more affinity towards the oculomotor nerve, that is the nerve supplying the muscles of the eyeball. So then if it affected, then what will happen? It will lead to oculomotor nerve palsy. Sometimes what happens, there will be involvement of the phrenic nerve, which supplies which one? Phrenic nerve supplies which one, students?
Diaphragm.
It supplies the diaphragm, very good. So once if it is also affected with the diphtherial toxin, then it will result in breathing problem. So these are all the other bifurcated or the additional complications of the diphtherial toxin. So what is the most commonly seen clinical presentation? It is pharyngeal diphtheria. Then apart from that, this toxin through the blood route or the hematogenous route, it will reach the myocardium, causing myocarditis, or it may go and infect the neural tissue, causing polyneuropathy. Remember this word. It causes what? Polyneuropathy. And most commonly it may involve the oculomotor nerve, causing oculomotor nerve palsy. And it may even infect which one, students? Phrenic nerve. So these points you need to remember. Apart from this, this diphtheриal toxin even has got affinity towards our kidneys. So there it will cause what? Acute tubular necrosis. This ultimately results in what? Renal failure, and clinically it is manifested by what? Oliguria, that is decreased urine output. Now very important is that cutaneous diphtheria. Why I am stressing on this? Students, have you all seen this picture?
Yes, ma'am.
So this is a picture of the cutaneous diphtheria. Very important is that this cutaneous diphtheria is responsible for the occurrence of the endemicity of the diphtheria or sudden outbreaks, epidemics, or if at all some area there is a endemic zones. So there you can see this cutaneous diphtheria. So from this side, there will be slowly release, or the people will get contaminated from each other through this cutaneous diphtheria, and it is a chronic shallow ulcers and it is covered by a pseudomembrane. So this description is very, very important. So it is a chronic shallow ulcer which is covered by a pseudomembrane, and these lesions, it absorbs the toxin very slowly, and very important is that it is not a severe form. So because it induces very good amount of immunity. But these people with cutaneous diphtheria, they show or they act as a very good carriers for the community, or they can act as important reservoirs for the community diphtheria. Now, what is the important test to check for the immunity status and hypersensitivity for the diphtheria? What is the test over here? It is the Schick test. Yes. So if you want to know whether the person is immune to the diphtheria toxin or no, or if at all the person is got a hypersensitivity reaction to this diphtheria toxin, so there is a test that is there which is called as Schick test. So what we do is that in this test, intradermally, so within the skin, intradermally, we inject the what? Diphtheria toxin, that to 0.2 ml. It is also called as Schick toxin because it was first done by the pediatrician by name Schick. Now here test and control arm. So two hands or the arm will be taken. So on this arm, on one side where the toxin will be injected, it is called as test arm, and on the other arm where the deactivated or the inactivated toxin is placed, it is called as what? Control arm. Now what will happen? Intradermally we inject how much? 0.2 ml of the Schick toxin. Then on the control arm also we inject the same amount, and then after 96 hours you check the readings, that is you look for the erythema. Now let us see, there is no erythema, no redness on the site of injection of the toxin on this test arm. It indicates what? Negative reaction. That means already our body has got some antibodies and it has got the ability to fight with this diphtheриal toxin. So what is the thing over there? The person is now totally immune and he is non-sensitive, and there is no need to give any diphtheриal vaccine for this person. And if at all there is a reaction that is noted on the site of injection of this diphtheриal toxin, then what we can say that there is no antibodies produced for this diphtheриal toxin, that is a person is non-immune. And now what is the thing we have to do? This person should be given with what? Diphtheриal DPT vaccine.
Yes.
And if at all, if you see some erythema, and on the control arm also, if you see some redness on both test and control arm, if you see the redness, then what you can see that you can say that the person is immune, but he is hypersensitive, because in the control arm also you are seeing some redness over there. So that means what? This person is immune to the diphtheриal toxin. No need to give the diphtheриal what vaccine, but make sure that you give some antihistamines for this person if at all if he gets infected with the diphtheria. And there is a combined reaction. Combined reaction means what? There will be an erythema of more than 10 millimeters in diameter on the control arm. What you can see there also, you can see erythema, but it will slowly, it will fade off within a few hours. So it indicates what? The person is non-immune, but he is sensitive. That is, there is a hypersensitivity reaction, which indicates that if you want to give, if you give the diphtheриal vaccine for that person, then the person may develop anaphylactic reactions or hypersensitivity reactions to that toxin. So now what we have to do? We have to give this diphtheриal vaccine in a divided doses or the fragmented doses. So little bit you give. So today you give few little ml of this diphtheриal vaccine. then give a day gap, then again after 2 days again you give a diphtherial vaccine, so that in between gap whatever is there, you manage that hypersensitivity reaction by giving the what antihistaminics to the patient, and then again you give the diphtherial vaccine. So in this way if you give, what happen, the patient will become immune to the diphtherial toxin, and you can also make sure that the patient's hypersensitivity reaction to diphtheria is also controlled. Then if at all there is a person is already clinically showing a diphtheria and severe type of diphtheria, then what the management we have to do? So what is the thing we can do over here? That is, first you give the diphtherial antitoxin. It is a passive immunization. Students, can you all hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
So what you can do here is, if the person is clinically like already an active case and it is an acute diphtherial infection and it is clinically very severe form, then what we have to do, we have to give the diphtherial antitoxin. Now this is an equine or the horse made antitoxin. What do you mean by this? Here what we do is like we grow the diphtherial Corynebacteria diphtheriae in the horse. Now what will happen? The horse body or the horse blood, it will produce the antibodies against this diphtherial toxin. Now what will happen? We will take out the antibodies from the horse body. Then what will happen? We will purify it and then we will prepare the what, the antitoxin serum. And this antitoxin serum which is taken from the or collected from the horse, it is used for the treating of the diphtheria in the humans. So that's why we call it as what, equine or the horse diphtherial antitoxin. It can be MCQ question for you. So this antitoxin is derived from what, students? It is derived from horse or sheep?
Horse.
It is derived from the horse. Now, what is the antitoxin dose over here? If you see the laryngeal or the pharyngeal diphtheria, within 48 hours, you need to give 20,000 to 40,000 units of this diphtherial antitoxin, and it should be given subcutaneously. If at all there is a nasopharyngeal diphtheria, then again you give 40,000 to 60,000 units. And if at all there is a bull neck or extensive diphtheria, very severe form, then you have to give the 80,000 to 1,20,000 units of this diphtherial antitoxin. Then very important is, what is the drug of choice for this diphtheria? What is the drug of choice? It is always erythromycin. Just keep it in your mind. Diphtheria, last is ending is which one, students? Diphtheria is
E.
ending with which one? E. So remember that its treatment or the drug of choice is which one? Erythromycin. And for us, very important is carriers. So carriers are very risky for the community or the healthy people. So if you have identified any carrier, then please give that fellow carrier also erythromycin. How much you will give? 500 milligrams 4 times a daily. For how many days? This is very important duration. It is 10 days. So you will give for how many days erythromycin? Students?
10 days.
For 10 days. Now coming to the diphtherial vaccine, that is DPT. So you can give it in a separate form, either only diphtherial vaccine, or you can give it in combination form, that is DPT. So this combination can be either DPT or it can be DT. So multiple mix and match combinations can be done. But most commonly we use it, which one, students? It is triple antigen. It contains what? Diphtheria, pertussis and tetanus combination. Now you tell me, in this diphtheria is a toxin or it is a uh, cellular form of the organism? What is this particular vaccine containing? Does it contain only the toxin or it contains the entire Corynebacteria diphtheria which is inactivated? What does it contain? Students?
It contains some toxoid.
Yeah, it contains toxide. Toxide means what? Diphtheria in this DPT vaccine, D and T. Remember, that is diphtheria and tetanus. These two are the toxides. That is the toxins. That is the exotoxin. So we collect the exotoxin from the Corynebacteria and we inactivate this toxin with the help of what? Formaldehyde. So once the formaldehyde is added to this toxin, then it becomes what? Inactivated form, and it has got this what potential to stimulate the host immune system. So then we call it as what? Toxide. So here D and T components are what? Toxides. What about this pertussis? It is a toxoid or it is a total Bordetella pertussis? What is this?
This is toxin, ma'am.
It is a total organism itself. P,
Yes,
no, pertussis, in this DPT, P itself is a complete bacteria, so which is killed. So here in this DPT vaccine, D and T are the toxins or the toxoids, rightly to be called. Whereas the P, that is pertussis, it is the complete organism. So this you have to remember. Yes.
yes.
And what is the nature of this DPT vaccine? It is a liquid vaccine. It is a killed bacterial or the killed bacterial liquid vaccine. And one more important point I want to tell you is that nowadays, what is the what vaccine practice that is going in the world and even in India, that is EZ5. So along with this DPT, another two vaccine components have been added. What is that? Hemophilia influenza and Hep
Yes,
B, that is hepatitis
Pentavalent.
B. Yeah, it is called as
Pentavalent.
pentavalent or EZ5. That is easily five, protection against the five organisms. We are easily giving it, and the route of injection is also same, and they have got best results also. So this point you have to remember. And in DPT vaccination, one more point I want to stress you here is this fellow pertussis is there. No, once this pertussis is added to this DPT vaccine, then the immune stimulating potential of the vaccine will be furthermore increased. So the moment we add the pertussis, then this DPT vaccination, a vaccine, it will become very much strong. The moment we inject into the body or the host, more and more of the antibodies will be produced against these three things. But if the pertussis is not there, then the immunogenicity capacity will be little bit less. So this point you have to remember. So what is the role of this P component in this DPT? The pertussis, it has got the potentiality or the potential to enhance the immune stimulating capacity. Next, if you look at the composition, very important, many times this composition related questions has been asked. What is the composition of this diphtheria toxide? So it is what? 20 LF, and tetanus toxide it is 5 LF. Then what is pertussis? It is 20,000 million. So this composition you have to remember it. Then what is the dose of this DPT vaccine? 0.5 ml you need to inject it, and it should be given how? Deep intramuscularly. What is the preferable site? It is a lateral aspect of the thigh. So if the baby is there on the lateral aspect of the thigh, this particular DPT vaccine deep intramuscularly 0.5 ml has to be injected. Now what is the schedule over here? So it is a primary dose, that is at 6th week, 10th week and 14th week after the birth. Remember this. 6, 10 and 14, that is at 4 weeks of gap you need to give this DPT vaccination. Then after that 2 booster dose has to be given. So when is the first booster dose to be given? 18th month. And when is the second booster dose given? It is given at
5 years.
5th year. So this is a primary dose and secondary is the booster dose. So these are the two things you need to remember it. So already I told you the pertussis component, it enhances the potency of the diphtheria toxin or the vaccine and the absorbed. So here if you see the composition, here aluminum phosphate is present. Can you all see this? Why is
Yes.
this aluminum phosphate is added? So what will happen? It will go and attach to the D, P and T components. Now what will happen? It will further increase the immune system stimulating capacity of this DPT. So why all these things are added to this particular vaccine component? Just it will enhance the, or boost the host immune system. Now, very important thing is that if the child has not received the primary immunization with DPT during infancy and is already more than 2 years old, that is the schedule has been missed, then requires primary DT, not DPT, only with 2 doses with 4 weeks interval followed by a booster dose with DT during 5th year. Did you all understand this statement, students?
Okay, ma'am.
So the thing is that the child is 2 years old, and if the child is 2 years old and the child did not receive any vaccination for DPT, now it is a mixed vaccine. The vaccine schedule has been missed for that baby. So what we have to do? You just give only diphtheria and tetanus. No need to give the pertussis. because it is important that the pertussis will be effective only if the child is less than 2 years of age. If you give if the child is more than 2 years of age, it is not going to stimulate any host immune system against this pertussis. So better don't use. Even if you give, sometimes what happens, some chances of complication may happen rather than some benefit to the baby. So better is that if the child is more than 2 years old, then give only DT, no need to give DPT. And how you should give 2 doses at 1 month interval, and the booster dose should be given at again 5th year of that baby. So remember this. Now let us see some MCQs related to the diphtheria. True about diphtheria are all except, read this question properly. True about diphtheria are all except. Now look at the thing. Carriers are more susceptible source of infection than cases. Do you all agree with this?
Yes, ma'am.
So we all know that for diphtheria, carriers are very, very dangerous. If at all some fellow, we know that carrier means just be away from that fellow. And what is the incubation period?
Two
It
to
is
6 days.
2 to 6 days. That is less than a week. This is also correct. Then what about this composition? If you see this composition of this diphtheria DPT
Yes, ma'am.
vaccine,
This is
so
20, ma'am.
it is 20 LF. Yes. Now what here it is given 25 LF. That is limits of flocculation. Don't you think that this is wrong actually?
Yes,
It
ma'am.
is 20. Then diphtheria is endemic disease in India. This is also
Yes.
correct actually. So in certain regions, especially in sometimes some remote areas and all, it is endemic in India. So it is also correct. So what is the appropriate answer for this question?
C.
Students,
C.
it is C. That is 25 LF. So the diphtheria toxin present in DPT vaccine is not 25, it is 20 LF. Next, positive Schick test indicates what? What does it indicate?
Ma'am,
Positive,
positive susceptible to diphtheria.
yeah, susceptible. Positive Schick test means what? The moment you inject the diphtherial toxin onto the into the arm of the individual, what will happen? After 96 hours, you will see some erythema more than 10 millimeters in diameter. So what it indicates that the person doesn't have any immunity against the diphtheria. So what you need to do? You need to give the
Ma'am,
person DPT vaccination.
immunization.
Immunization has to be done. So it indicates what? Susceptibility of the individual to the diphtheria if the person is positive to Schick test. Are you all clear, students?
Yes, ma'am.
Next, incubation period of diphtheria. So
2
what
to
is
6 days.
incubation period?
2 to 6 days.
6. Akash, Smriti and others, Vishal, it is how much? 2 to 6
2 to
days.
6 days.
Next, what is the drug of choice for prophylaxis against diphtheria? So remember,
Erythromycin.
it is erythromycin.
Erythromycin.
Very good. Then management of non-immunized diphtheриal contacts include all except. So how do you manage the non-immunized diphtheриal contacts? So what to be done? So one is, if at all there is a contact person, you can give the prophylactic penicillin. That is also correct. And antitoxin for the contacts where there is no clinical symptom as such. You can give antitoxin 1000 to 2000 units. It is also correct. Then daily you do the throat examination. It is also correct. Then daily throat swab culture. Do you think is it correct? Daily you take the swab from the throat and you do the culture for
No,
diphtheria. No, that
no.
is not practically right actually. So we don't do all this everyday culture. So this is wrong actually. Then weekly throat swab examination and weekly once you can do culture. This is correct. So what is the answer over here? Daily throat swab culture is the option. You need to opt it over here. So this is all in relation to the diphtheria. Any doubts, students? I think now you can solve the MCQs related to diphtheria. So shall we go to the second one?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So second one, it is a pertussis. So pertussis, it is also called as what? Whooping
Whooping
cough.
cough.
It is also called as 100-day cough. Who will call this 100-day cough? Who use this terminology? They are the Chinese. So our present fellows trainees know. So in their region, they call this pertussis as what 100-day cough, because whatever this baby it gets affected, no. So almost nearly till 100 days, the baby will be suffering with this cough. What is the agent or the causative organism for this? It is the Bordetella
Bordetella.
pertussis. And here, very violent cough spells. The moment the baby or the child it coughs, a violent and metallic gun type of sound you can get it. Some some type of very gunish type of violent type of cough spells can be heard, and especially it is what inspiratory wheeze you can hear. Like what happens? The baby or the child it will be coughing, and there will be epiglottis. It will be closed. Then what happens? The air it will be hitting the glottis and all. Then it will result in the production of that typical sound. So that we call it as what whooping sound. And then what will happen? Whooping noise as air passes through the swollen airway. And very important point is that infection is never subclinical. Remember this. If the child gets infected, then make sure it is confirmed that that baby will get the show the clinical manifestation. Remember this. Why I'm insisting on this point is an MCQ has been asked related to this. Pertussis means if the baby is infected or the infant or the adolescent is infected, then definite that they will be showing clinical manifestation, that is pakka. And carriers are very very rare, whereas in our diphtheria what happened, we have seen a lot of carriers and they are very much dangerous to the healthy people. But here the infection spreads by what cases. If one baby is infected, then this child will spread to the another healthy people. So that is the cases are important modes of spread for the pertussis. Yes. Next, let us look at this organism little bit. So you look it from the microbiology point also. It is caused by what? Bordetella pertussis. It is a gram-negative coccobacilli, and very important is that it is capsulated strain. Here in this Bordetella species, no, both capsulated and non-capsulated forms are present. But the one which causes the what whooping cough, it is by the capsulated strain of this Bordetella. And how does it spread? We already know that it is respiratory. Then pakka it is droplet spread. And very important is that fomites. If somebody coughs and the bacteria it will go and through the droplets it will go and fall onto the pencil or the table or whatever the non-living objects which we call it as what fomites. So this organism can survive on the fomites for many days, several days. And very important is that this pertussis, it produces a toxin, and this toxin it will attach to the epithelial surface of the respiratory system. Now, students, remember here, Bordetella parapertussis, even it also causes whooping cough like clinical manifestation, but it is minor in or mild in its pathogenicity. So clinically, it presents very mild presentations. The baby will be coughing and some wheeze or stridors you can listen, but it is of very mild in nature. Remember this, very, very important. And what is the secondary attack rate? It is
More
90,
than
more than 90%. What do you mean by secondary attack rate? For example, if one fellow is already infected and clinical manifestation is there, now surrounding him, if there are 100 healthy people, in that 100 healthy people, 90 people will definitely get this pertussis. That is for pakka. There is no doubt in that. And it infects only man. That is, man is the only reservoir for this Bordetella pertussis. And what is the incubation period? It is 1 week to 2 weeks. That is 7 to 4 days.
14.
For the entry of the organism till the appearance of the clinical manifestation, which we call it as incubation period. And what is the incubation period for this pertussis? It is 1 to 2 weeks. That is 7 to 14 days. Now let us see little bit about the toxins that are produced by this Bordetella pertussis. This fellow produces varieties of toxins and clinically which are very important. Let us see. It produces heme agglutinin, pertactin and agglutinin. All are these toxins which helps this organism to attach to this what? Respiratory epithelial cells. Now look at this. Respiratory epithelium means what? It contains what? Cilia, right? Do you all agree with this? These are the projections on the outer surface of the cell wall. Do you all agree with this? Any respiratory epithelia, it contains what? Ciliated cells. Usually they are pseudo-stratified columnar ciliated cells. Now this three toxins, it helps this organism to attach to the what epithelia of the organism. Now after this, the second toxin, that is tracheal cytotoxin. This is a very dangerous toxin. Now this body teller, what does it will do? This fellow, it will produce this tracheal toxin, which is very dangerous to what? The cilia. Now once this organism attaches to the respiratory epithelium, yes, I am attached now. Now after this second thing, it will release this tracheal toxin, and this toxin, it will paralyze the cilia. Now there won't be any ciliary movements, all the cilia will be dead. Now what happens because of this ciliary paralysis, there will be buildup of the mucus. There will be buildup of what, students? Mucus. Can you see this picture over here, everybody?
Yes, sir.
You appreciate this green color thing. Now the mucus will build up. Now what happens, there will be layers of the mucus. Now the very dangerous toxin will be released by this body teller, that is pertussis toxin. Pertussis toxin. Now what happens, this pertussis toxin, very dangerous toxin, it will further makes the organism to tightly adhere to the respiratory epithelial cells, and it also stimulates for the production of T cells. It will stimulate the host. Now you come and produce all the T cells. All the T cells come towards me. Now what will happen, all the T cells will go towards this respiratory epithelial cells. Now it will like boom up for the inflammation, and it will also sensitize the histamine. Now it will ask the mast cells, you also come and release all your histamines. Now T cells, histamines, everything will be concentrated, or like there will be more concentration of all these T cells, histamines in this respiratory epithelial area. Now deadly inflammation will take place with a lot of mucus, and this is what this pertussis toxin will cause. Now at the end, what will happen, this bacteria also it produces one more toxin, that is adenylate cyclase toxin. This is one more dangerous toxin. What it will do, the macrophages, whatever the host macrophages are there, now it will inhibit the host macrophages, and it will give signals that now you people only die, kill yourself. That is, it will induce the apoptosis of this host macrophages. Students, can you all hear me?
Yes, sir.
So this is how this particular diphtheриal bacteria, sorry, not diphtheria, the pertussis, it will cause its pathogenicity. So what are all the toxins it will produce? Hemagglutinin, pertactin, agglutinin. All this helps for the organism to attach to the respiratory epithelium. Then tracheal cytotoxin, it will paralyze the cilia. And very, very important toxin is pertussis toxin. It will stimulate the T cells and sensitize the host for the histamines, and everything will cause bouncing up of the inflammation. And adenylate cyclase toxin, it will block the phagocytes and it will kill the macrophages. So this is how this bordetella toxin it will act. Now clinically, how many stages are there? Students, this is very important for you. So clinically, this pertussis, it shows three stages. One is catarrhal phase, another is paroxysmal or spasmodic stage, and the last one is convalescent phase. Now, catarrhal stage, it lasts for 1 to 2 weeks, and it is very contagious. Whatever the spread has to happen, it will happen in this particular stage itself. Here, the infected person will show nasal congestion, cough, and low grade of fever. And during this stage, he is highly contagious because a lot of bacteria is present in the secretions. And this is followed by which one? Spasmodic phase. So in this, what will happen? All the mucus will be there. There will be muscular spasm, and the baby will be coughing uninterruptedly. So there will be continuous cough will be there. Then because of which what happens? The baby, what it will do? It will vomit. It will induce a vomiting, and it may also lead to the collapse of the lungs. And apart from that, there will be rupture of the capillaries leading to the tiny petechiae, and there will be subconjunctival hemorrhage. Subconjunctival hemorrhage. So this is all seen in the paroxysmal or spasmodic stage, and it lasts for nearly 6 weeks. So very important is that because of this cough, what will happen? There will be decreased blood supply or the oxygen to the vital organs, especially to the brain. It will result in what? Seizures and encephalopathy. And if it is very severe, then there will be coma and leading to the death. And apart from that, the baby's or the infected person's respiratory epithelium is already damaged. Now the epithelium is no way able to protect the lungs. Now ultimately it will result to what? Secondary bacterial infection leading to the cause of what? Pneumonia. Now, after 6 weeks, then what happens? The person will get into the recovery phase, which is called as what? Convalescent phase. It is called as what? Convalescent phase. Can you all hear me, students?
Yes, ma'am.
So, in this convalescent phase, what will happen? The cough, it will be reduced and baby will look little bit healthy. Then what will happen? This whooping, everything, it will be fading away. Everything, inflammation comes down and the baby will completely recover and looks healthy. So the important points to be noted is that the entire, all this pertussis, all this clinical manifestation, it will start and end within how many days? 100 days. It will end within how many days? 100 days.
100 days.
So the most infective period is what? Catarrhal stage, that is the
Catarrhal.
first stage, that is 1 to 2 weeks. Or MCQ can be asked that it can be infective from onset, that is from the catarrhal stage, at least to the 3 weeks of the paroxysmal stage. If you see the second stage, at least 3 weeks of the second stage, till then the person is infective or communicable to the others. Now, what are the complications of this pertussis? Very important and commonly asked MCQ question. What is the complication of this pertussis? So, because of the severe respiratory inflammation, what will happen? So, there will be inflammation of the what lungs, and it will lead to what? Bronchopneumonia. What is bronchopneumonia? It is the congestion or the inflammation and accumulation of fluid in entire lobe of the lung. Almost a section or the chunk of the lung is totally infected over here. It is called as what? Bronchopneumonia. So it is one of the possible complication, and only one lobe of the lung, if it is infected, then we call it as what? Lobar pneumonia. So the most serious complication of pertussis is what? Bronchopneumonia. Entire lung is infected. And very important is that there will be flaring up of TB or tuberculosis. If at all there is a mycobacteria tuberculosis, if that fellow is also here, you will also feel very happy. Now for me also it's a nice chance because lungs have become very weak. Now I will also show my power over here. So what is another complication? Flaring up of tuberculosis. Apart from that, because of the cough, so what will be there? There will be inguinal herniation, there will be subconjunctival hemorrhages, and there will be convulsions because of the hypoxia, and there may be rectal prolapse, and ultimately the person may land up into coma because of the possible hypoxic features. Yes. Now, how do you diagnose this pertussis? Do this nasal swab and then you put it for the culture, or PCR is like recent and the most confirmatory, and other important thing is direct fluorescence antibody testing, and you can also go for checking for the degree of lymphocytosis to check for the severity. Students, do you all agree with this?
Yes, ma'am.
Because we already know that this pertussis is one of the toxin. What it will do, it will enhance the stimulation of what? Lymphocytes. Now lot of lymphocytes means what? The severity is more, lot of toxin is produced. So if there are more lymphocytes, then what will happen? The severity is also more. So based on that you can assess the degree of severity of this pertussis based on the lymphocytosis. Now, what is the measure to prevent this pertussis? You can go ahead with giving the vaccination, that is DPT. So already we know how it should be given. So it is given as a primary dose and it is given as a booster dose. Primary dose at what, students? 6 weeks, 10
Yeah.
weeks and 14 weeks. And how much it should be given? 0.5 ml, and it should be given deep intramuscularly on the anterolateral aspect of the thigh. And when should be the booster dose given? 18
18 months.
months. And then fifth year, no, not required. Otherwise, if you give also, no harm, because there is no much use of giving this DPT at fifth year of age. So to get protection for pertussis, give only one booster dose. And what is the vaccine efficacy? Very important. It is 70 to 90%. You have to remember. So what is the vaccine efficacy for this DPT? It is 70 to 90%. If you give only 2 doses, then what is efficacy? 50 to 60%. And if you give 3 doses, it is 70%. Now, one more point I want to tell you here is that if the mother if she is a pregnant lady, if she is in her third trimester, can you give this DPT vaccine or no? Students, can you give or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, you can give actually. If she's coming from the endemic zone of the pertussis, or if there is a sudden outbreak here and there, many cases are there, and she's a pregnant lady, and if she's in third trimester, now we want to protect this baby. So how do we protect the moment child is born? It should not get this pertussis. So what we give in her third trimester, we give this DPT vaccine so that the mother will produce the antibodies against this pertussis. Now, what will happen? These pertussis related antibodies from the mother, it will cross the placenta and it will enter the fetus, and that fetus will get the antibody protection for pertussis. Once it is out of the womb, then it will have the protection for at least 6 months or till it gets its vaccination for this pertussis. Yes. And very important is that in this DPT vaccination, the neurological complications because of the pertussis vaccine or pertussis component is very much high. And what is the chances? 1 in 1,70,000 vaccine. It is not common, but at all, if at all neurological complication happens, it is because of the pertussis component. And it is out of how much? 1 in 70,000 vaccinated cases. Now, what is the treatment of this pertussis? What is the drug of choice over here? Here also, what is the drug of choice? PE. It is erythromycin is the drug of choice, and when it is better acted, it is best during the catarrhal phase. It is during what, students? It is during the catarrhal phase. It is well acted. And what is the dose given? 30 to 50 milligrams per kg body weight, or simply you can give 500 milligrams of erythromycin. How much you need to give? 4 times a day for how many days? 10 days. And if at all there is a contact, this fellow he didn't develop the disease, but he has contacted somebody who is an active case, then you need to better always give prophylactic erythromycin again for how many days? 10 days. Very, very important. Now let us see some of the MCQs related to pertussis. Incubation period of pertussis. What is the incubation period of pertussis?
7 to 14 days.
It is 7 to
14 days.
14 days. What is incubation period for diphtheria? It is less than 1 week. It is 2 to 5 days. Remember this.
Yes.
Yes. Now, what is the treatment of pertussis? What is the treatment or prophylaxis? Because
For
in one of
10 days.
we need to
Prophylaxis.
give prophylactic
10
antibiotic
days.
for 10 days, 14 days, 12 days, or 11 days. Now, you should only answer.
10 days.
Do you all others, do you all agree with this? What Roshan is saying?
10.
It is for 10 days. Just keep it in your mind. For 10 days, I am going to give what? Erythromycin. If the baby is affected with pertussis or somebody has contacted the case of pertussis, then give a prescription of erythromycin for 10 days. That should be there in your mind. That is a prescription to be given. Then, true regarding pertussis is all except what is true. Let us see. It is associated with the inspiratory oof. When the air is taken
D,
in, there will be
D,
oofing sound. It is correct, right? It is an
D, ma'am.
inspiratory oof. And secondary attack rate is 90%. Yes, that is sure. It is like highly contagious to others. And pneumonia is a very most common complication. Do you all agree
Yes,
with this? Yes,
correct.
it is pakka actually. And parapertussis causes
Wrong,
more severe disease than pertussis.
wrong.
Students, in the very beginning, I told you, Bordetella parapertussis, even it also causes
Less
some
severe.
coughing type of clinical manifestation, but it is little bit milder. It belongs to same family only of Bordetella, but it causes symptoms very mild. And drug of choice is erythromycin.
Yes,
So now in this, which one is wrong here,
D,
students? So
D.
D is wrong, right? Everyone, do you all agree with this?
Yes,
Akash,
ma'am.
Sirisha, Smriti, and others, Vishal, do you all agree with this? Fine. Now, after this pertussis, we will go to next one, respiratory disease, that is meningococcal meningitis. It is also called as what? Cerebrospinal fever or cerebrospinal meningitis. Now, what is the thing over here? It is a bacterial infection which is spread through the respiratory route, and it is acute in nature, and it affects the what? Meninges, that is a covering layer of the brain and spinal cord. So meninges, where does it covers? It covers what? Brain and spinal cord, right? Yes or no? Brain
Yes, ma'am.
comes out through the what? Foramen magnum as it continues down as what? Spinal cord. So these two are totally covered by what? Three layered structure that is called as what?
Meninges. Vector
Meninges.
meninges.
So what are those three layers? They are dura mater, then arachnoid matter, then the last and the third layer, which is
Pia.
very much close to the brain tissue, it is pia mater.
Pia.
Yes. Now, when these layers are infected or inflamed by the bacterial means, then we call it as what? Meningitis. And if the cause of that meningitis is what? Neisseria meningitis, then we call it as what? Meningococcal meningitis. Now, let us see how this fellow bacteria looks like. It is arranged always in pairs. It is always arranged in pairs. Now, this fellow is joined by each other. Yes, and gives an appearance of what? Diplococci. It is a round shaped bacilli, round shaped cocci, and they are arranged in always pairs, and it is a gram negative. Gram negative means what? It has got a very thin peptidoglycan layer. Do you all agree with this? If you remember the gram stain, the bacteria which has got a very thick peptidoglycan layer, then it is a gram positive. If it has got a very thin peptidoglycan layer, it is gram negative. And it is a non-motile, and it does not produce any spores, and it is an obligate aerobe. This fellow doesn't need any oxygen to grow. Sorry, it requires oxygen to grow. Very sorry to wrong spell this. It is an obligate aerobe. And very important is that it is a catalase and oxidase positive. Remember this. Very, very important. What do you mean by this? This meningococci, it produces two enzymes. One is catalase enzyme, another is oxidase enzyme. So these are the two enzymes that is produced by this meningococci. And what are the diseases that are caused by this Neisseria meningitis? What diseases it causes? It causes meningitis if it infects the brain, and it causes general septicemia or sepsis, finally resulting in what? Shock. And it may also cause what? DIC, that is disseminated intravascular coagulation. Now let us see how and all it causes. Now, apart from that, from the epidemiological point of view, uh, so what you have to observe is that meningitis belt. MCQ can be asked related to this. So what is the meningitis belt of the world? Students, can you all observe this? What is the meningitis belt? Roshan, Akarsh and all. Can you see this map over here?
Yes, ma'am.
So which world map, in the world map, which continent it is representing? It is Africa. It is Africa. If you see this Africa, the center point, it is the equator, which is the line that runs from the center of this particular continent. So in this equator, the north section, that is, which is to the topmost, the north section, this area is called as what? Meningitis belt of the world. So here if you see Guinea, Burkina, Nigeria, Chad, Niger, all Sudan, Ethiopia, these are all the places where meningitis is very much common over there. Where meningococcal meningitis is very common. If we go there, then better that you take the vaccination before, then only you go to those places. Or if at all somebody traveler who comes from this particular place, then make sure that you give him vaccination for this meningococcal meningitis, then only you receive him in your community. Yes, so this area of the world is called as what? Meningitis belt of the world, which is in north of equator to the Africa. And one more point very important here is meningococcal meningitis. Here carriers are very important. In one more disease we have seen carriers are very important. Source of spread of disease. What is the disease? Students, it is
Diphtheria.
diphtheria. Others,
Diphtheria.
so they are all very simple
Diphtheria.
concept, students. What is the incubation period here? It is 1 to 5 days, again less than a week. And who are the like most susceptible age group? They are usually young children and adolescents. They are very susceptible. So now what is our vaccine target group? They are the young children and again adolescents. Now remember this WHO classification of meningococcal area, very, very important from our PSM point of view. MCQs are asked on this and you may also get this MCQ. Now World Health Organization. it says that meningococcal meningitis is common in certain areas, and how can you rate that areas low, endemic, moderate, high, or epidemic? How can you say that? What is the criteria for that? If you want to say that it is a low endemic area, then in that area at least 2 cases of meningococcal meningitis should be present out of 1 lakh cases, out of 1 lakh population per year. Yes, if you want to say
Yes,
moderate
ma'am.
ethnicity, then 2 to 10 cases per 1 lakh population per year. If you want to say high endemicity, then focus on this high endemicity, because already question has been asked on that. If a geographic area, if it shows more than 10 cases of meningococcal meningitis per 1 lakh population per year, then you call it as what? High endemic area for meningococcal meningitis. That means what? It is of somewhere around 0.01%. Then when do you say that there is an epidemic or outbreak of this meningococcal meningitis? You say that when there are more than 100 cases per 1 lakh population per year. That is, it is what is the incidence over there? 0.1%. Yes. Then what is a case fatality rate? Now, case fatality rate means what? If somebody got this meningococcal meningitis, what is the chance that the person will die or the fatality will happen? So, what is the case fatality rate over here? Because of
80%.
meningococcal meningitis, it is 80%. If at all this fellow has got meningococcal meningitis, and if you did not give any treatment or if you haven't identified, then 80% chances that that person will die. But if you do early diagnosis and give the treatment correctly, then this death can be prevented or reduced by harm drastically. So then the case fatality rate, it will be only what? 10%. That means what? If you give the right treatment with the early diagnosis, then the case fatality rate is what? Chance of him dying is only 10%. If you don't give the treatment, then 80% chances that he will die. These are two important points. Now let us see some more points about this bacteria. We know that it is gram positive or gram negative. What is this Neisseria meningitis? Students, it
Gram negative.
is gram negative.
Gram negative.
And this fellow has got a what? Capsule, right? It has got what? Capsule. Now, based on this capsule, serotyping has been done. Different modifications are there on this capsule. So based on that, many serotypes has been observed. And among those, the one which causes this meningitis is 8 types are there. How many serotypes are there, students? 8 types. A, B, C, D, then 29E, then X, Y, and W135. These are all important for humans, and in humans these are the one which causes what? Meningitis. They have got more affinity towards brain layers. Now in this again, A and C, especially this fellow A and C, they are responsible for what? Outbreaks, epidemics. They are very contagious. If one fellow is infected, and through this respiratory route, again many people will be infected. So to cause the epidemic, which serotype of N meningitis is important, students? If there is an outbreak, then keep it in your mind. That means in this community, A and C type, and in that most common is what? A fellow. This A fellow is very much common. Remember this. As a PSM fellow, you need to know this
And
people who are causing these outbreaks. And very specifically, if the question is asked among ACB, who is very much strong means to cause epidemic, it is again A. The first fellow is very much strong. Then very important is that this N meningitis, it grows on a special type of media that is called as Thayer Martin agar. And it is made up of what? Sheep blood. This fellow has got lot of affinity or love towards which one? Sheep blood. If sheep blood is there, it will nicely grow over there. And very important is that to this Thayer Martin agar, if you add antibiotics like vancomycin or nystatin, then very nicely it will grow, because this vancomycin nystatin, what it will do, it will inhibit the growth of other organisms which are present in that sample. So whatever the sample if you have taken, so in that CSF sample or throat sample, whatever is there, if you have taken and put it on culture media, in that media you put this vancomycin or nystatin. Now there is no guarantee that only N meningi will be there in that sample. There may be other organism also, right? Now this antibiotics, it will kill those organisms, and it won't kill this N meningitis. Now what will happen? Entire plate will be cultured by this or grown by this N meningitis. So nice growth will be seen in that. Very important is that N meningitis, it ferments maltose. This is the one based on which what will happen, you can differentiate it from the N gonorrhea. So if you take a test tube and if you do the maltose testing, then what will happen, the color of the test tube or the solution whatever is there for this maltose testing, it will remain red in color for the N gonorrhea. But whereas if there is a N meningitis, if you put the sample, what will happen, it will, the sample will turn into orange in color. If there is a change in color in the test tube sample, then it indicates that pakka it is again N meningitis. Yes. Then
Yes, ma'am.
N meningitis, this particular organism, it is normally present in our nasopharynx and in the pharyngeal mucosa. They are present in most of the people. Even you people, I and many of us will be having this N meningitis, but it will become virulent or it will show its virulence only when the host immunity is down, or if the person is HIV infected, or if it is a very small young baby or small baby where it is not having a very good immune system. So under all these circumstances, it will become very much strong and it will show its virulence. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Now let us see some of the virulence factors. Now, how does this N meningitis, this fellow will cause a disease? We already know that it is a capsulated gram-negative organism cocci, and this capsule it is made up of polysaccharide. And this capsule even it has got some hair-like extensions, which is called as pili. So this capsule, along with the pili, they act as what virulent factors, and it will attach because of the capsule and pili to what host cells. It will attach to what students? It will attach to the what host cells. Then
Yes, sir.
after the capsule, just below the capsule, what is present? The cell wall. Again, this fellow cell wall is also dangerous to the host. This cell wall has got two opacity proteins. That means it contains two proteins which look opaque in nature. And what are they? OPC and OPA. Just remember the name. But for us, what is important, very dangerous toxin produced by this N meningitis is IgA protease. So this is the enzyme produced by this N meningitis bacteria. And what is the importance of this IgA protease? Students, now you simultaneously finish your microbiology also. Now, what does this IgA protease it will cause? It will cause the destruction of the host IgA antibody. What is this IgA? It is a secretory antibody. Yes.
Secretary
So
antibody.
now this IgA protease produced from this N meningitis bacteria, it will destroy all the IgA antibody. Now again, all the antibodies which are present on the mucus or secretory lining or epithelial lining, they are all lost. So this is how this fellow meningitis will be showing its virulent performance. So what are the villain features over here? It is a capsule, it is a cell membrane, it is a pili, and very important is IgA protease. Just remember these names. Now let us see the pathogenesis of N meningitis. Now how does it appear? Now what will happen? This N meningitis, what it will do? It will enter the polymorpho neutrophils, mononuclear neutrophils. So it basically get into the neutrophils. And what will happen? This neutrophils, our neutrophils, it will produce what? Hydrogen peroxide to kill this N meningitis. Yes. Now what will happen? This N meningitis, we already in the beginning learned that it produces two enzymes. One is, what is the enzyme here? It produces catalase and oxidase. Do you all remember this
Oxygen.
enzyme? So now what happens? Once it is engulfed by the host neutrophils, now neutrophil will produce hydrogen peroxide to kill the meningitis. Now what will do this fellow meningitis? It will in turn release this catalase. Now this catalase enzyme, it will try to fight with the neutrophil and the neutrophil will be destroyed. Now neutrophil will be finding it very difficult to kill this N meningitis because it's not able to kill because it is releasing this catalase enzyme lot and lot. Now our neutrophil is tired. Then what will happen? Within the neutrophil, this fellow N meningitis, it will multiply and it will grow. It will multiply by binary fission and lot of what? N meningitis will be grown within the neutrophil. So in the cell sample or under the microscope, you can see intracellularly or within the neutrophil, all this N meningitis, the diplococci shaped organisms. Then once the neutrophil is full of this N meningitis, neutrophil, what will happen? It will burst. It will what? It will burst open. Now, once the neutrophil is busted, what will happen? This fellow, all the N meningitis, it will come out and it will enter where now? It will enter the bloodstream. Now it will enter the blood capillaries tubes. Now it will have the nice flow directly into the bloodstream. Now in the bloodstream, what will happen? It will go and touch the endothelium of the blood vessels or the capillaries. Students, are you all getting the point what I'm trying to tell here?
Yes, ma'am.
So now in the capillaries, now this fellow N meningitis, it will produce one more what antigen or the toxin, that is factor H binding protein. Now what this will do, this particular H protein of the N meningitis, it will go and affect the complement system of the host. Now if the complement system is gone, means what? Our host defense system itself is totally gone. It is no way able to fight against with this N meningitis. Now again within the blood vessels, it will start multiplying and it will destroy all the capillaries. Now again it will cause what? Widening of the gap between the endothelial cells. So there will be ultimately what? Leaky capillaries. Leaky capillaries. Now because of the leaky capillaries, what will happen, students? Now you only tell me. So because of the leaky capillaries, everything will come out of
RBC are
the capillaries.
increased.
Now all the vital organs, they are not getting the blood supply now. They are like, Arre, I'm not getting my oxygen, I'm not getting my nutrients, nothing I'm getting, because the capillaries endothelial junction is gone and all the toxic substances are inside, and here and there clot formation also taken place. Now vital organs will be suffering. Now because of this suffering, what will happen? Septicemia, and then it will result in what? Shock. Hypovolemic shock or septicemic shock will be there. Then ultimately what will happen? There will be multi-organ failure, then there will be death of the person. Yes, do you all agree with this? Then simultaneously, this N meningitis, it will also induce a clot formation. Can you all see the picture over here? Students, can you all see here?
Yes, ma'am.
So now,
Yes,
apart
ma'am.
from the damage to the capillaries, this bacteria also, it will induce the clot formation. Now, because for the clot formation, all the platelets will come over here, and this will ultimately result in what? Depletion of the platelets in the other sides of the body. So there will be what? There will be what? Here and there petechial lesions will be there, and apart from that, there will be also disseminated intravascular coagulation. So like this N meningitis, it will cause what? It will cause the, what are the things it will cause? It will enter the blood and it will cause the septicemia, and ultimately it will terminate in the shock, or it may cause disseminated intravascular coagulation, or it may get into the circulation and it may cross what? Blood brain barrier, and it will enter the brain. There in the brain, it may affect the meninges and causing meningitis. If that is not the thing, this bacteria may turn its route and it may get into what? It will go and touch which one, students? Adrenal glands. Sometimes what happens? Through the hematogenous route or through the blood route, this N meningitis, it will go and touch which one, students? It will touch which one? Adrenal glands. Now, because of the leaky capillaries, all the blood and body fluid, it will go and cause pressure on this adrenal glands, and it will cause what? It will cause the stunting or the narrowing of the vessels that are supplying this adrenal glands. So because of this, what happens? There will be necrosis of the adrenal glands. This necrosis of the adrenal glands results in what? Insufficient production of aldosterone and cortisol, and it will ultimately result or make the person to land up in what? Shock. This is called as what? Fulminant. It is also called as what? Fulminant. What it is called as? Meningococcemia. It is also called as fulminant meningococcemia. It is also called as Waterhouse Friderichsen syndrome. Yes, and very important point here to be noted is that in this Waterhouse Friderichsen syndrome, you don't see any features of the meningitis. Here it is only affecting what, students? Adrenal gland. Yes, if the question is asked, what is the complication, possible complications of this N meningitis? So what will you answer? It is
Waterhouse Federation syndrome.
syndrome, and it affects what? It affects what? Adrenal
Adrenal
glands. How does it affects? Because of the rupture
leaky
of
capillary.
capillaries, what will happen? Lot of pressure will be acting on the adrenal glands, And then what happens, lot of pressure, and because of this volumic pressure there will be stenosis or the narrowing of the blood vessels supplying the adrenal glands, and totally necrosis of the adrenal gland, ultimately resulting in insufficient production of the hormones by this gland, and it will result in this shock like symptoms. Yes. Apart from that, what else you can see? You can see if the person is affected with this meningitis and other complication in the trunk region or in the abdominal region, center portion of the body. What you can see, students, all this petechiae can be seen, spots you can see. Can you all see in this picture?
Yes, ma'am.
Students, this is a classic feature of what? N meningitis, especially the especially other manifestations, septicemia and other clinical manifestation. Now, if we at all, if it is affecting the brain tissues, that is meninges, then what all clinical things you can see? You can, the person may complain of headache, then there will be altered mental status, then there will be photophobia, and there will be stiffness of the neck, and there may be high fever also. These are all the classic clinical complaints of the meningitis caused by this Neisseria meningitis. Yes. And what is the nature of this particular N meningitis? It is a suppurative. That is, pus cells will be seen with the raised intracranial pressure. Now, can you tell me, because of the raised intracranial pressure, what can happen? There can be hydrocephalus, because there will be blockage for the path of the cerebrospinal fluid, that is CSF. So what will happen, because of lot of CSF and there is a blockage, it will lead to the compression of the nearing brain tissue and it will produce its according clinical manifestation. So this is one of the potential complication of this in meningitis. Then in 5 to 10% of the cases, arthritis can be one of the complication, or there may be cardiac involvement causing pericarditis or myocarditis. Then in some percent, that is 5%, another complication is convulsions and even mental retardation due to damage of the brain tissue. So this is all about the N meningitis, how its pathogenesis, about the bacteria and all its complication. Now let us see the treatment or the drug of choice, or how do we manage. Now thing is that what is the treatment of cases? If a case comes to you, already clinical manifestations are there, complaining of headache, stiffness of the neck and with the high fever and petechiae are seen in the abdominal or the trunk region. Now how do you manage such type of case? As early as management, it is the best. So you give the patient what? Penicillin G. How to give this penicillin G? It is always parenteral route. Do you all agree with this?
Yes, ma'am.
So it is always given what? Parenterally, never oral route. Or nowadays we give this cephalosporins, third generation. Very important, very important is for carriers of this N meningitis. Like clinically no symptoms are there, but they are carriers. If you have identified that if the person is carrier, then what do you give? You give what? Rifampicin. Yes.
Rifampicin.
See, remember carriers. R is present, and for the carriers of N meningitis, you give what? Rifampicin. What is the drug of choice for pertussis and diphtheria? Students,
Erythromycin.
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 And what is the drug of choice for carriers in N meningitis? It is rifampicin.
Rifampicin.
And if at all there are contacts, means one case is there, and this case many healthy people have contacted this case, then what the drug of choice? You can give rifampicin or ceftriaxone. If the option is given either rifampicin or ceftriaxone, you can opt for any one of them, or both also you can opt. Now, very important points to be remembered is treatment of cases. If you treat the cases, what can happen? The fatality, that is, it can be reduced. Already we know the case fatality. If you don't treat this N meningitis, what is the fatality? It is 80%, but
80%.
the fatality will be only 10%. Then isolation of cases is of limited use in epidemics. That means what? If you have come to know that he is a case, and if you isolate him, that means you don't let him contact the other healthy people. And if you give him penicillin or cephalosporins as a first line of drug or treatment, but there is no guarantee that there will be control of epidemic. There will be other cases, it will happen by itself because of the presence of carriers. So treatment of the cases doesn't control the epidemics. This point is very important. Then mass chemoprophylaxis. It causes immediate drop in incidence rate. So what do you mean by mass chemoprophylaxis? That means what? You know that epidemic has happened. Now in this many cases you have seen, and in that some healthy people also there. So for everybody you give this rifampicin in its course. So you give the normal course of rifampicin for even healthy people and affected people in that epidemic zone. Then what will happen? There will be incidence rate will be reduced. That means what? Further new cases occurrence will be reduced. There will be immediate drop in occurrence of the new cases if you do the mass chemoprophylaxis. Yes. Now let us see the meningococcal vaccine. It is an active immunization. So what is the type of this vaccine? It is a killed vaccine and a cellular fragment. Cellular fragment. Now already I told in the beginning, this particular fellow, this N meningitis, it is a gram-negative diplococci and he has got what? Capsule. Yes? Do you all agree with this, students? Students? Roshan and
ma'am.
others?
Yes, ma'am.
So now what happens? This meningococci, it has got a capsule. Now in this, based on the capsule, there are many serotypes are there, right? Different strains are there. In that, A strain is responsible for the occurrence of epidemic. Now, based on this capsular antigen only, the vaccine has been produced. Now, vaccine has been produced from what? A, C, Y, and W135 serotypes. This point you have to remember. Look at here, there is no B serotype. B strain is not there because what they have observed is that even if you take B strain and even if you inactivate and if you inject into the host or the human, that B strain is not having any capacity to induce the host antibodies. Yes, so that is, it doesn't have any immunogenic capacity. It is a useless fellow. So then don't give that B capsular strain for this vaccine preparation. So in the vaccine of this meningococcal vaccine, what strains are included? A, C, Y, and W135 organisms are strains are included. And remember this composition. Each strain, that is 50 micrograms of each capsular polysaccharide is included. If there is a means 50 micrograms of A capsular polysaccharide is present and 50 micrograms of C capsular polysaccharide is present and Y is again 50 micrograms and W is again 135 that is again 50 micrograms. So each one is 50-50. Yes. Next, meningococcal polysaccharide antigen. Uh, it can be available in a monovalent or it can be available in a conjugated form. What do you mean by conjugated form, students? So either you will be having purely meningococcal derived vaccine, that is ACYW strains may be present, or it can be along with this meningococcal, there may be diphtheria or there may be H influenza, some other newer bacterial combination also can be there. So if that is the thing, then we call it as what? Conjugated vaccine. Yes, students, are you
Yes,
all
ma'am.
clear this? And again, if it is only meningococcal, again in this meningococcal also monovalent, bivalent, or polyvalent. Different varieties are there. Monovalent means what? Only A type, or only C type, or only Y type, or W. So if there is an epidemic outbreak, then what is required for us? Target only on this A type. Yes, so that time you can go ahead with giving which one? Monovalent. So you need to look, okay, now there is an outbreak. Now let us better give this monovalent type. So if there is no outbreak, then if it is an endemic area, something like that, then you give a multiple things. Now, what is the dose over here? It is 0.5 ml. Subcutaneously, it has to be given on the anterolateral aspect of the thigh. And very important is that if you give this meningococcal vaccine, it will give the protection or the immunity will be there for how many years? 3 years. And after 3 years, what you have to do? You have to give a booster dose. That means what? Booster dose has to be given once every 3 years. And very important is that is this vaccine indicated for pregnant lady? No, don't give this
No.
vaccine for the pregnant lady. But do you remember pertussis? That fellow's vaccine can be given in a pregnant lady during what trimester?
Third trimester.
Third trimester. Remember
Third
this.
trimester.
So if it is an endemic area or if there is an outbreak of pertussis, we want to protect the new coming baby. So we need to give the pertussis vaccine to the mother. Why third trimester? Because it is the
It
same.
gives passive immunity.
It gives passive immunity and organogenesis and all has happened already in the first trimester. So it is very much safe for the baby also. Now let us see some MCQs related to meningococcal meningitis. One question that has been asked is meningococcal vaccine available is. So already I stressed a long
AC,
on that ACY.
ACY W135.
Yeah, ACY W135. Now you people only
ACYW135.
wherever B is there, don't look at that fellow. B,
First one, ma'am.
yeah,
Yes, ma'am.
none of
A.
first one is correct. All others, Vishal and Upadhyay and other students, Smriti, Akarsh,
First one.
Sirisha, are you there, Sirisha?
First one.
Yeah,
Yeah, yes,
Sirisha,
ma'am.
you can see the slides right now,
First
right?
one, ma'am.
Yeah,
Yes,
but you
ma'am.
can see the slides, now, Sirisha. Yeah, first one, it is correct.
Slides also visible,
Now,
ma'am.
it's visible, right? Fine. Another question is, according to World Health Organization, that is WHO criteria for high endemicity for meningococcal disease include. Now look at this
Zero,
table. In the
zero
beginning itself,
point zero,
yeah,
zero 1.
it is
10
0.01.
cases.
When you say that that particular geographic area is
One.
highly endemic for meningococcal meningitis, that means when there are more than 10,000, 10 cases per 1 lakh population per year, then you call it as what? High endemic zone for meningococcal meningitis. You have to remember this. And which is the what the meningitic belt of the world? Which is the meningitic?
African equator. African equator.
Yes, African equator. So African equator, that is north, in the north section. In India map also north means what? It is always upright. So take a African map in the center, whatever the countries, and little bit above that, 5 to 15 degrees from the equator, no? All those zones are what? It is an endemic area for what? Meningococcal meningitis. As a public health personnel, why it is important for us? Because if you go there or somebody come from there, you should be careful that you inject a meningococcal vaccine for that fellow. Don't listen to him. Inject, then only you send him. Yes. Did you all understood why it is important?
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. Now, most common serotype of meningococci, which causes the epidemics worldwide. Now, you should only
A.
answer.
A.
Yeah, the starting fellow is very dangerous fellow. So any type of epidemic for meningococcal meningitis means yes, it is A fellow. Then what is the best thing for us? Monovalent A vaccination. Can we give it over there?
No, ma'am.
Huh? We can give actually, targeting only A type. Next, meningococcal vaccine contains. Now, looking at the composition, we already know that A, C, Y, W135 strains are present, right? And each strain, what is the quantity or the content? Amount it
15
is
micrograms.
50 micrograms. It should be fixed in your mind. No further
Yes, ma'am.
looking here and there. 50 is there, then my answer is correct. If you tick for 50, then you're done. Thumbs up. That's it. Yes. So what is the meningococcal vaccine? It contains 50 micrograms of polysaccharide of each strain. So what all strains present here? A. Students, you
C.
should only answer me now.
ACY W135.
A, C, Y, and W135. Yes, don't forget this. B is not at all there in this meningococcal vaccine. Now, next, prophylaxis of meningococcal meningitis. What is the best drug for prophylaxis?
Penicillin.
No, penicillin is
Yes,
for
ma'am.
who has answered? No, who has answered penicillin? Okay, whatever it is, penicillin means for treatment of the active cases. Rifampicin means it is for treatment of the carriers or
Sorry, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
asymptomatics. Rifampicin,
Rifampicin, ma'am.
yeah, you should just keep it in your mind. Meningococcal meningitis because it can cross the blood-brain barrier. It can cross what? Blood-brain barrier. If you see this penicillin G, do you think it can cross the blood-brain barrier?
No, ma'am.
because we need something that reaches our target site, right? Even though it crosses, but we need to give some adjuvants and all to it. But rifampicin is the best one, which has got a bactericidal action, and it is very good in killing this meningococci. Yes. So I
Yes.
think the possible MCQs related to diphtheria, pertussis, and meningococcal meningitis are covered. So in the next session, other things will be covered, pneumonia and other parts. Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
So are you all clear with this? Any doubts?
No, ma'am.
So in one thing I want to ask you, like in Gulbarga recently in India, you people only, you medical students only, an outbreak has happened among the medical students. Akash Shandal, did you hear about this news last year? Anybody from Karnataka? No? I think you must be aware of this particular thing. In your colleges, any vaccination for DPT has been started? Because in our college, in my college here, in SDM, the college has started giving the DPT vaccination for all the students over here, keeping in mind that an outbreak has happened in the Gulbarga students. So that means what? It is an important thing for you, and it may be asked because anything of importance, which is in the red hot topic things, no, they'll be asked for you. Yes. So till now, in the respiratory infections, what all we have seen, students? Smallpox we have seen. Yes, students, what all we have
Yes,
seen?
sir.
What all we have seen? Smallpox.
Smallpox,
What is the organism or the
malaria,
virus it causes smallpox? Varicella major.
varicella, major.
Varicella, you
Yes.
remember that.
Major.
Varicella
Major.
major. It causes that smallpox. And you have to remember the vaccination thing, clinical features and all. What is the clinical manifestation of the smallpox? The clinical criteria given by Rao's classification, RAO. He was the person who has given the clinical identity or manifestation or clinical features of this smallpox. Why you should know? Because if at all outbreak happens as a means of bioterrorism, as a future doctors, you need to be able to identify the case of smallpox, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So what are the five clinical types? One is classical, another one is, did you all forget this? Everything should be in your brain tip. Classical, then you're not answering anything. When you need,
Ma'am, just
huh?
forgot.
Forgot. Fine. Anyway, you see the
Yes.
slides or anything, you will just remember all that because MCQs can be asked related to all this and everything. The drug of choice you need to remember. Erythromycin, where it is given, rifampicin, where it is given. All these points you need to remember. Yes. So next class, no, I'll let you know. Maybe tomorrow or Sunday I will take. Is it okay for you, for me to take it on Sunday?
Yes, ma'am.
Fine. So I'll, as per the convenience or the time thing, no, I'll look at the time and if possible tomorrow I'll take. Otherwise Sunday I'll continue with the other things. Fine.
Okay, ma'am.
Fine.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you. Bye.